Hello and welcome. We're glad you could join us today for the complimentary ICMI webinar, Best Practices for Blending Automation and Agent Assisted Service in the Contact Center. Our sponsor for today's presentation is BoldChat by LogMeIn. I'm Erica Maroy, Community Strategist here at ICMI, and I'm going to be your moderator for today. Now, before we go any further, I do have just a few quick announcements. One, we are recording today's webinar, and that recording will be available within 24 hours. You can actually access that recording using the same link that you used for today's live presentation. Second, we are planning to save some time to answer your questions at the end of our webinar, so please feel free to submit your questions at any time directly through the Q&A chat function that you see here within your console. And do know that any questions we can't answer live will be answered offline or in an upcoming blog post. And before we go any further, I do want to encourage you to check out the links that we provided for you here in your console. One that I'll highlight is that we do invite you to join us this May in Orlando, Florida for ICMI's Contact Center Expo and Conference. And BoldChat by LogMeIn will be joining us there as an exhibitor, so we'd love to meet you in Orlando and continue the conversations that we start today. You can use the link that we've provided here to download a brochure for more information. Next bit of housekeeping is that you will see some Twitter handles and hashtags listed on your screen right above the presentation, so we encourage you to use those and be social. Share what you learn, ask questions, let us know how we're doing. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers for today. I'm joined by Ross Haskell of BoldChat by LogMeIn, and Ross is Senior Director of Products, where he leads product strategy, liaison with customers, and development in order to push customer care agents towards a future of enterprise-class features, mobile dominance, and unparalleled efficiency. And then Sean Hawkins is also joining us today. Sean is the Manager of Support and Product at Framework Home Ownership, and he has more than 15 years of progressive call center leadership experience in public, private, and government sectors. Also, Justin Robbins, who's the Content Director here at ICMI, will be joining the conversation here in a bit. So I do want to highlight one more time before I turn things over to our speakers. We really do encourage you to be social throughout today's webinar, so please don't forget to use the hashtags and handles to keep the conversation going. So to kick things off, we do know that Ross and his team at BoldChat have done a bit of research on today's topic, so we're going to start by hearing from him, and later Justin and Sean will discuss some of the biggest questions that we've heard from our community. So again, thank you all for tuning in today, and I'm going to now turn things over to Ross.
Great, thank you. So I would just like to reiterate our thanks for everyone who's joining today. We know that everyone's busy, and giving us an hour of your time, we certainly are appreciative of that. So what I hope is that you get something out of today's webinar, some best practices, some tips, and maybe just some information. So speaking of that, you know, the increase in self-service is a really strong indicator of the move towards automation. Automation sometimes has a bad name, and we think that comes from years of automated phone systems that have really frustrated customers. It's, in fact, the chief complaint among consumers who are trying to reach an agent that they get stuck in this sort of IVR land. But today we're seeing self-service in digital channels actually on the rise. So we did some research, and we found that 84% of customers use self-service, either mobile or web or frequently asked questions for support, and it's higher than any other channel. Not only that, but it's growing. So it's up from 67% when we measured it in 2012. So pretty significant amount of growth there. So consumers really are looking around to help themselves. 72% of customers turn to the web to find answers to their support queries before calling a company. So that's kind of a double-edged sword, right? It's really good that they're trying to do this, but it may fail. It may end up that they can't find the answer that they're looking for. They're not getting enough detail, and they end up making contact with the contact center. You know, and customers are increasingly preferring digital channels. In fact, if consumers knew that they could get a resolution to their issues on the first attempt, 78% of them would choose a channel other than a phone call. And so it's really key that we do a good job in these other channels of actually resolving consumers' problems. we're seeing all kinds of artificial intelligence and natural language processing applied in so many different places and across a whole bunch of different devices. Even now, it's starting to appear, right in people's homes, right in their kitchens. Think about the proliferation of the Echo, for example. And the technology is getting better all the time. Over the next decade, automated service will comprise a much larger portion of the overall customer experience, especially in the mobile environment. Gartner, I've got a little statistic here from Gartner. They're doing a ton of research around this, and they predict that by 2020, smart agents powered by artificial intelligence and natural language processing and so forth will facilitate 40% of mobile interactions. And that's just not very long from now. That's 3 years from now. So as you can see, it's really growing. It's on the rise. Integrating self-service into your contact center is challenging, definitely, and because consumers don't think about it this way. They think about problems and solutions and how quickly they can get those things solved. But we here on the vendor side and on the contact center side, we have to think through things a little bit more carefully because we know that not every channel is appropriate and automation can't be used all the time. So we have to think through this sort of continuum that you see here. What's the best channel associated with what problem I'm actually trying to solve? Is it a really high-touch channel, like video chat, for example, or could this problem be solved through some kind of automation? This spectrum it used to be that, well, we just make every channel available all the time, and we'll let customers choose. And that's just not good enough anymore. Now what we need to do is we have to think through what's the best channel for the current situation that we're in. And if automation works, well, that's great. Everyone wins, right? The consumer gets an answer faster, and we've avoided a more expensive interaction, yet without any detriment to satisfaction. So this is a really, I think, helpful spectrum to think about because this complexity is up to us. We're the ones who have to internalize it because consumers don't think this way, right? They just choose the channel that is most convenient for them. So I wanted to end my part here with giving you an example of someone I think is doing a lot of things right when it comes to finding the balance between automation and real-time engagement. And the other thing I'll note is that they're also very cognizant that a lot of these engagements and a lot of this automation is really helpful in a mobile setting. So the example I'll walk you through is Thomas Cook. They're a travel retailer, basically out of the UK, a very big one in Europe. And I think they do a really nice job in finding a nice balance between using automated solutions and making it seamless if that fails. I think that's one of the things about automation that would be helpful to remember for today is most people approach finding the balance with automation as if it will be successful. They say, okay, so where are the scenarios where we can use automation so that we don't have to engage in a one-on-one conversation? And I think it's actually interesting to think about it in the reverse, which is let's just say that the automation attempt fails. What happens next? Because we want to salvage this engagement. We don't want that to be the end experience, right? And I think Thomas Cook does a really nice job here. So I took all of these screenshots myself from my phone. I have an iPhone, and so I wanted to show that they've thought through the fact that travel consumers are very frequently mobile, right? And so they've made sure that this experience works really nicely on mobile, in addition to working on PCs and laptops and so forth. So as you can see, when I go to their website and I'm looking for help, they've got several options for me. It's not overwhelming. They've categorized them nicely, so I can look for answers myself. I can interrogate their sort of knowledge base of answers myself. But if I decide that that's not getting me where I need to go, they have sort of omnipresent chat capability on the right-hand side there, live chat, that just stays with me as I navigate their website. And if I choose to engage in a live chat, and what I did is I put in an initial question and said, I want to find my booking. And what they've done is they've presented to me, before I actually get into a chat conversation, some potential answers. And you can see that these answers are actually really rich HTML. I can click on them, and there's formatting, and there can be pictures and all kinds of things in there. And so maybe this answers my question. And if it does, I can say, yes, it did, or no, it didn't. And behind the scenes, just so you know, those ratings matter, right? That changes the order in which we may present a particular answer. So I just said, no, that doesn't answer my question, and then I'm presented with, okay, what do you want to do at this point? So they're really thought through the failure scenario, right? They've said, okay, do you want to ask another question, or do you just want to go right into a live chat conversation? And if I decide I want to go into that live chat conversation, by the way, I don't do anything else. This window simply stays here, and this becomes the chat window. And so it's very seamless for the customer, which is great. So, I think they're doing a really nice job in finding this balance. They've got an omnipresent contact option. It works really well on any device. It's integrated and it's seamless. There's a one-click escalation into a live engagement in the case that the automation solution does not answer the question. And by the way, it's transparent on both sides. So the agent who receives this live chat will know that I've asked a question, that I've clicked on a piece of content, and that I have said that no, that content does not answer my question. So they actually, they would know that, which is great because I don't have to repeat myself. They would be able to immediately begin that live chat conversation and say, how can I help you find your booking? Or let me help you find your booking. So it's a good experience all around. So I like to end with a really salient example of someone who's doing it well. And at this point, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Justin, who's going to kind of do an interview-style presentation with Sean, so we can learn about some more best practices.
Awesome. Thanks, Ross. I'll tell you what, I loved some of those stats that you shared. I was kind of rapid-fire tweeting them out as you were sharing them. And it was really, really cool to see how some of the companies today are able to really find that right blend. And I love that idea of planning for the what if it fails rather than just expecting automation to get it right. So with that said, as Erica mentioned earlier and Ross, as you mentioned, one of the things that I get to do in my position is have a lot of conversations with contact center leaders like those of you who are on today. And recently, we've been getting a flurry of questions from people who are really trying to understand what's the right way, what's the best way for them to look at utilizing their live and agent assistant interactions for the best, most high-value types of contacts, and where can they bring in self-service automation to also really help and provide a great customer experience. And so some of those questions I've pulled together and really, wanted to invite Sean Hawkins. He's been an ICMI top 50 thought leader. He's someone who I've come to know and respect for a number of years. And so, Sean, just thank you for your willingness to spend some time with us this afternoon and answer some of these questions that I have on my mind and that I know a lot of people probably have on their minds as well. So to get us started,
thank you, Justin.
Sean,
I appreciate the opportunity.
In your opinion, yeah, absolutely, Sean. Sean, so in your opinion, should customer service be all agent assisted? Should it be all automated, or is it a blend? What are your thoughts just kind of starting out there?
Well, I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all answer. And I say that because I've been a part of and visited contact centers, quote unquote, that were 2 to 3 people. And obviously with 2 to 3 people and very little volume, automation may not be ideal for them. So I think first you have to determine if there is a need and not get enamored with, automation for the sake of automation. From my perspective, when I first think of automation, I'm looking at agent-assisted automation. What can I do that can improve the team, where they can become more efficient and they can provide a better customer experience? And so I think, when you look at terms of automation, you first of all have to have a great understanding of is it needed, and how you want to use it. But back to your question, I think from my perspective, a blend of the two works well. Again, you know, automation where it's needed and when it's used properly is a great thing, but automation for the sake of following others or you know, trying to have the next best thing is not necessarily a good idea. I think it really comes down to your need. Customers expect to interact with the front line at some point. There may be interactions that require that human-to-human point of contact, so you certainly don't want to fully automate things, but at the same time, there are certain interactions that may not require that human touch. So you want to be able to really survey the needs of your customers and what you can do to meet those needs, but at the same time, look internally. How can we improve how can we improve the workflow of our team? How can we become more efficient? So I really think that taking those two different approaches will allow you to come to an automated solution that really works best for you. But over the years, I've always been a fan of the blended approach.
Sure. You know, and so in full transparency, I agree with you that blended is you know, the right way to go. You know, what I think is really great and something that I want to call attention to that you said, Sean, is the importance of looking back from the customer's perspective. I know for a lot of us contact center leaders, and we've probably maybe even been running contact centers in general, or the one that we're in for a really long time, and it's easy to fall into that mindset or just a personal kind of paradigm of thinking that, you know what, no, our customers, I know as the leader of the contact center that all of our customers, they want to talk to a live agent, or I know that our customers, they want it all to be automated. And we get inside our own heads, I think, sometimes and make some of those decisions rather than, Sean, like you mentioned, really going out and asking our customers and finding out what they would prefer. So I would agree that it's a blend. Because I agree with you and because I think that is the right way for a lot of contact centers to go, I also recognize that there's probably a number of decisions that have to be made there, which is going to bring me to the next question that I want to ask you, Sean, is do you find that it's certain types of interactions that are best when they're automated? And if that is the case, and there's certain ones that you think really lend themselves well to automation, what have you done in your contact centers to make those decisions on what to automate?
Great question. So I think automation is ideal when the task is simple. In other words, if it's something that the customer can do on their own, it will be ideal for automation. Some examples are things that most of us are doing on a daily basis. We're checking the balance on our bank accounts or our credit card statements. We're looking to change passwords on our accounts, checking shipping orders. Those are things that don't necessarily require getting on the phone, navigating through an IVR, getting routed through ACD, speaking with an agent, and going through that interaction. You know, you should be able to get those bits of information fairly quickly with the use of automation. So I think you certainly want to make sure automation is simplified and that it's not cumbersome, and you do that by utilizing automation for tasks that are fairly simple to complete. Here's another example. You know, suppose you want to show your customer some love. You know, what can you use emails for when it comes to customer appreciation? Well, you can automate those. I recall years ago we were doing this wonderful initiative, really just trying to engage our customers and let them know that we really cared about them. What we would do was send out automated emails based on their birthday, their anniversaries, you know, how long they've been with the company. We give certain people special discounts and promotions, and all of that was something that was automated. You didn't require an agent sitting at their console pushing these types of emails out, you know, These are things that can certainly be automated fairly quickly, fairly simply. I think automation can be used in a proactive manner with chat software as well. I think in most cases it's probably a built-in feature with the software that you're using. Perfect example of that is customer comes to your website. They're idle for 2 or 3 minutes. You know, you can use automation to push out a message to prompt them to you know, navigate the page, whatever it is that you're trying to do. You can get that. I know I utilized it previously when I was in a software as a service company. When someone would come into their account, they would navigate through the software, and if they spent more than 30 seconds of idle time, our chat software sent out a message stating, you know, this is the page you're on. If you're trying to accomplish these steps, try doing these things. Most of that stuff can be done fairly simple, easily as well, but you certainly want to make sure that when you're talking automation, the interactions are those that are, you know, easy to accomplish. They don't require additional feedback or additional points of contacts. You know, I just want to get this answer, and you know, we quickly push that information out to you.
Yeah, Sean, you know, I couldn't agree more that it's, you know, the highly repetitive, the easy to replicate, the transactional types of interactions that lend themselves well to, you know, so if we as contact center leaders are trying to make some of those decisions, it's thinking through what are those interactions that we're experiencing today, and maybe it's, you know, also asking our agents a bit of, you know, what are some of the things that you feel like you do and it's just highly repetitive and you do it a lot to identify some of those things. You know, the other thing, and I'll tie this into a stat that Ross mentioned earlier, about 72%, I think was the number, visit a website before calling a company. You know, I am totally that guy who visits the website before contacting the company, and I can't tell you how many times I've been doing something, whether it's been thinking about a purchase or I've clicked through, you know, a number of pages, and then you get that automated chat window that pops up, and you know, it's, to me, I just think about myself as a consumer, and I love anytime service decides to meet me where I am. To me, it's easy. It saves me time. It's convenient. So for me, you know, when I think through automation, and if I were still leading a contact center today, that's one of the things that I'd be asking is where are there opportunities for me to meet my customers where they are? Where can I engage them? Where I know they're kind of captive, you know, audience to my product or my service, and really provide an added value to them. And I think that's where we start to see a lot of the wins. You know, we talked a bit about the automated side of things, but I would also argue, and Sean, I think you're a believer in this as well, that, you know, agent assistance isn't going to go away. If anything, it's only going to become more valuable. So I'm just curious, on your perspective, are there certain types of interactions that should really just be agent assisted? And if so, what are those interactions? What do they look like? What types of interactions should we be thinking of as contact center leaders?
Well, I think agent-assisted interactions, first of all, I think you want to be careful. Again, I go back to what I said, you know, at the top of the conversation. Automation for the sake of automation is not necessarily a good thing. It's in the end, it will cause you more problems than it will solve. So again, you want to make sure that you have a good understanding of what you're doing and why you're doing it. As far as the types of interactions that I feel are best when agent assisted, it would probably be those that were extremely technical in nature. Let's say you know, your laptop isn't working, you have to call your service provider or the manufacturer. You know, chances are you may get to a point where, using whatever automation they may have to do some sort of quick triage didn't solve the problem. So you need to speak with an agent. They need to walk you through some troubleshooting steps. I think those types of interactions are certainly not best when automation is used. Go back to what I said, it has to be something that's fairly simple. It doesn't require that unique touch point. But for issues that are complex, and again, what is your industry? If I'm in the hospital, and I have a nurse line, that's something I can't automate. We want to make sure that we're getting in front of a person. So I think you have to look at what your business is, what are your customers demanding, and then make those decisions.
Yeah, no, I certainly agree that we've got to look at the complexity. Is it something that could be highly technical? I think through a number of interactions back through my time in the contact center, you ask some of those questions of, is there time that you can use human emotion to your advantage, right? If we think about what are some of the things that we can't get with automation or AI, right, is we often can lose some emotion. So is there opportunity, whether it's working on customer retention or maybe it's a certain high value type of customer that you have? How can we look to use it to our advantages, right? Just in the same way that automation or AI has advantages, self-service has advantages. We want to look at what are the advantages of using that live agent, and it is when they have to think through maybe ambiguous situations, highly technical, complex. So Sean, to keep things moving along, I think about any wisdom that I have is only the result of making a ton of mistakes beforehand to get that wisdom. And you are a guy that I know has lots of wisdom, which I also know it means you've made some mistakes. So talk to us about some of the mistakes that you've made when you've gone and tried to automate service.
Wow. Where do I begin? I've made many mistakes. I've come to learn that those mistakes were part of the growing curve. You learn from your mistakes, obviously. And so I would just advise anyone out there, don't be afraid to make mistakes. I tell young managers, if you're afraid to make mistakes, just get to the understanding that you're going to make a lot of mistakes. So, some of the mistakes I've made range from poor planning, not fully vetting a product, not doing extensive QA. Here's a funny story that comes to mind when I think about the mistakes I've made. So I wanted to really engage our customers with our chat team. I was finding that we were wasting a lot of time because our customers would become idle and they wouldn't utilize chat. And so I wanted to figure out how we could, improve that experience, and rather than allowing them the opportunity to get more frustrated trying to figure something out, we wanted to be proactive and really reach out to the customers using our chat software. And so I was fortunate to get this approved, and we did some testing. We just made sure that the ability to really get this going was agreed upon. The testing that we did in the software, we did it fairly quickly. And again, I was just so concerned with automation for the sake of automation. I wanted to do this. And so we finally went live, and it was a total disaster. And the reason why it was a disaster is because our software actually had a built-in feature when customers would log into their account and begin utilizing our software. We had a built-in feature. If you were idle for 30 seconds, then the software itself would prompt. And based on some of the previous actions and clicks that you may have made, it would just offer up a variety of different articles or suggestions. Well, that 30 seconds was perfectly timed with my 30 seconds with our prompting of the customer in our chat software that we were using. So we were giving customers multiple messages through multiple boxes, and it was a huge disaster. I can look back and laugh at it now, but watching that live was very embarrassing. It was very frustrating at the same time. It taught me that, number one, you need to make sure that you thoroughly vet what you're doing. You never leave any stone unturned. It was just one of those things that I was so enamored with the use of technology that I decided to really push forward without giving proper thought and due diligence. Again, we can laugh at it now, and quite often, I share that story with others, and it seems funny at the time. It seems funny now, but at the time, it was one of those things that, it was a nightmare, not just within support, but really throughout the entire organization.
Sure. No, I have been there, Sean, as I'm sure a number of us have also been there. So, what I think is important about what you said, and one of the key things when you're thinking about automation is really having time to put together a thoughtful strategy on when and where you're going to deploy it, how it's going to come into play, what will trigger it, who's going to be involved, how are you going to run quality on it. Really having, we at ICMI call it a customer access strategy. But really having that sound plan in place when you're looking to implement not just automation, but really any new channel. I would say one of the mistakes that I've made here, Sean, and really everybody is if you can do the strategy and all the planning you want up front and you deploy it, but it's not. I just remember the commercials, and maybe this is dating myself a little bit, but I just remember watching the infomercials for the Showtime rotisserie oven, and the slogan for the Showtime rotisserie oven was, and maybe you guys remember it, it was set it and forget it. And I've seen so many contact center leaders make this mistake with self-service and automation, is you put together the strategy, you set it, and then you just forget about it and don't go back and check to make sure it's continuously working, that your customers are leveraging it effectively, that it's not causing them to escalate or to abandon and move to another channel. So that's one mistake that I made that I would encourage people don't do. So have the strategy up front, but don't with self-service and automation, don't set it and forget it. Make sure that you're looking at how people are engaging, what the utilization is with your automation and your self-service technologies, really so that you have that well-rounded kind of balanced perspective on how you're providing service. So let's say, Sean, you've made the decision as a contact center leader, and you're thinking that there are some things that today are agent assisted that we are going to move to automating them, because honestly it makes a lot of sense, not just as an organization, as a contact center, but also really for your customers' benefit and convenience. Anytime that we do that, there is this period of education where we've got to now, expose our customers and really tell them about this new option that's available to them. So what are some tips and maybe advice that you would provide contact centers on how can they educate their customers on using their automated services rather than maybe a historical agent-assisted service that they used?
Well, I would say the first thing you want to do is be patient. I've learned over time that what seems like a wonderful ideal internally may not necessarily be perceived as one. So we have to be patient with our customers. Everyone will not adopt your offering at the same rate. I think we also need to understand that customers will default to the channel of choice, regardless of the automation. And so you have to help change that mindset, and you do that with communication, with education, and being an advocate on their behalf. A good way that I see this done now is with my bank, for example. I'll call my bank, and at the end of the interaction, if this was something that I could have done using their automation, then the agent will simply say, Mr. Hawkins, thank you for calling. In the future, you can go here or you can visit this website. And, you know, they do that with every interaction as long as it fit into an automated service. And so they were constantly putting that message out there. They were being vigilant in educating their customers, directing them and diverting them to where they wanted to go. And I think that's something that we have to take advantage of. Let the customers know what's available to them. You still want them to have the choice of channel they want, but there will be times when they'll need to adopt your automation. I know, you know, just hearing my bank continually tell me the same thing, I default to their mobile app for certain interactions now, and I prefer phone. But you know, they have directed me, they have taught me, and they offer, you know, great features via automation. So I think, again, it just comes back to having that communication, educate where necessary, and then advocate for them. You know, this will improve your experience. This will lessen your time to resolution. These are things that you can quickly get resolved by using our automation. And I think we have to be certain that as we're trying to communicate to customers, that we don't give them the sense of pushing them away from the live interaction or having that human touch, but more so we're offering an additional value.
Sure. You know, it in my mind goes to some of the, you know, very fundamental concepts when we think of just change management in general, right? It's a change for our customers as much as it is for a change of us. And, you know, I heard a speaker one time who said that really, you know, our mindset on change management is old way bad, new way good. And that's what we focus on, rather than really, you know, as Sean, you talked about the value and the benefits and how is this an enhancement to their experience and going to make things better for them. And, you know, I think that is important, educating where possible. And, you know, I agree with you, if there's places for you to position it, if the customer does typically call in, or they typically email, or they typically send you a text, whatever the case would be, looking for those opportunities to embed and educate right then and you know, kind of where they're at. So, you know, another thing, and this one actually I would say of all the questions, Sean, that you and I are talking through today, this is probably one of the most common questions that at least I seem to get from contact center leaders. So I'm going to give you a scenario. So say you have a customer and they're using self-service, and somewhere in that interaction, they need to speak with an agent. The most common question I get is, how do we make it easy for the customer to do that? So Sean, what advice do you have for contact center leaders to help make it easier and less complicated for customers to transition from one channel to another?
Yeah, Justin, great question. I think we make it easy through channel integration. You know, we need to allow customers to pivot when they want, regardless of the channel that they are in. I think most contact centers have siloed their channels. And because they've siloed their channels, each channel will communicate differently, they will brand differently, they will message differently, and at times they look like they're totally different contact centers or different brands. And so it's important that you bring all of those teams and departments in sync internally first. I would, one of the things that I did at a previous employer is I created a pivot team, and it was 2 representatives from all of the channels, and we met on a weekly basis, and we discussed some of the challenges that we were having. And as we discussed those challenges, it made it easier for us to understand what customers were doing when they were in certain channels and what caused them to move from one channel to the next. So we were able to get all of this data and then look for solutions via integration that allowed us to become rather seamless. So, I think the first thing you need to do is really understand internally what you're doing and have a full understanding of what channels your customers are using and why they're using those channels. But when it comes to channel integration, I think it has to be fluid. It has to be efficient. Customers are demanding that we're available when, where, how they want. We allow them the choice to move freely. We can't inhibit their channel choice, but we should know what channel they came from, and we should be able to resume the conversation from one channel to the next. So, I'd say the first step, before you start looking at software solutions or looking at developing something in-house, get your experts in-house, your customer service team. If you have teams for multiple channels, then bring them together and create a cross-channel team, is what I would like to call them. And from the data and the information and the feedback that you get there, I think that's a good place for you to really start building your case and determining what exactly it is that you want to do, so that you can really allow your customers to be free to move within channels from, let's say, I'm on your website and I leave your website and, then I want to use a chat feature. I leave your chat feature. Maybe I need to call you. Why don't you understand my concern before that last call? I was on your website. I chatted with someone. I may have tweeted with someone. I think we need to make sure that we get all of the customer data and understand what they're telling us.
So Sean, I love that, and so I have a confession to make. I've become kind of enamored with a metric over the past year, and it's one that I'm willing to bet, out of the people that we have on the webinar today, I'm willing to bet that easily 90 plus, if not 95, if not 99% of you aren't measuring today. And it really gets to the heart, Sean, of what you're talking about. And it's a metric that I've been calling propensity to pivot. In other words, for a given contact type in a given channel, how likely is that person going to move to another channel? So for your example, Sean, if you were looking up product information on a website, me as the contact center leader, I should be looking at, for all of the customers that come to our website, how many don't stay on our website for information. If it's, 1 million people that come to our website for product information, maybe I find out that we have 200,000 that end up having to call us in to get their answer, or we have 50,000 that send us an email, or whatever it would be. And the reason I want organizations to be thinking about this in terms of propensity to pivot and why I think it matters, Sean, is because it gives us a thoughtful and intentional approach to making some of those decisions that you were talking about. In other words, if I know the highest place where my customers pivot is, you know, from an inbound sales inquiry on my website, and I know that I am having a high volume of people who are abandoning my website, if I can find out where they're going, and whether that's to a phone call, whether it's whatever, you know, trying to chat us, whatever it would be, that enables me to, A, try to prevent them from pivoting, but B, make sure that in whatever channel they go to, we're able to effectively serve it and find out how do we prevent it again in the future. So for this piece of how do we make it easier and less complicated, you know, the seamless integrations that you were talking about were, you know, absolutely critical. You know, kind of the thoughtfulness and just looking back at the experience, absolutely critical. And then I would, you know, argue for us as organizations, we need to be looking at how likely is it for a customer in a given contact type to move from the channel they're in to, you know, whatever that next channel would be. So Sean, you know, we're quickly approaching here, you know, our last part of today's webinar, and I've seen a number of really great questions come in, and I know we want to do some Q&A. So Sean, if you're cool with it, I just have 2 more questions for you today, and then I would love to have Ross come back for some Q&A. Sean, my next question really is about your agents and the impact that all this has had on them. Really curious to understand, how have your agents responded to automation in your contact centers?
Yeah, so, you know, this is one of those issues that can be touchy. Just as you want to educate your consumer or customer base about your automation, or whether it's, you know, introducing new channels, you need to do the same thing with your contact center agents. I think, you know, most of us view automation as a way to cut back our workforce. For many on the front line, that's what they may view automation as. And so I think, you know, if it's automation that makes their job easier, you know, there's no more wasted motions, they love that, you know, whereas it took 3 or 4 clicks, or you had to utilize multiple applications to perform the same task over and over and over again. You know, automation makes that, you know, it makes it easier for them to do, and they really appreciate that. I think any automation that steers your clients, your consumers, your customers from having those human-to-human interactions is when I've discovered that my staff would get worried. So they're thinking the number of calls are reducing, the number of chats or emails are reducing, so, you know, they won't need as many of us, you know, in the future. And so I think what you want them to really understand is that there will always be a need for you. You know, there will always be a need for frontline staff, human interactions in your contact center. I think what you have a responsibility to do as a contact center leader is make that customer's journey, make their experience one that it fosters repeat business. And as long as they continue to remain with you, they're loyal to you, that business will continue to grow. They'll bring in additional customers, additional clients. So there'll always be that need to have your service team. And so, you know, I think depending on what the automation is, again, you know, it varies, but you know, if you're transparent, if you're open, you're honest, and you let them know that we're not doing automation just for the sake of, you know, having the next best thing, I found that, you know, regardless of what their sentiments are, they'll at least buy in because they know that you're trying to do it for, you know, you really want to do it because it's the right thing to do for your customer as well as for your staff. So, you know, it's one of those things where you really, you know, you have to put yourself in the shoes of the agent. They really focus on, you know, the volume, and that represents to them that there's a need for me to remain employed. So again, you know, I just say it really varies based on the automation that you're using.
Yeah, Sean, I think, a couple important things that you reiterated, I think are important for us in our conversations with our agents. The fact that their role is not going away, that it only becomes even more valuable, which is, actually kind of answered the other question that I had for you. But it is reiterating that the role of the agent is only going to become more valuable, and it's not even about a volume gain, because what we're going to see over time is as more is automated or more goes to self-service, the actual interactions that are coming to the agents are more complex, more complicated. So they're going to need to spend more time handling those interactions, and it's going to be less about a quantity of contacts and more about the quality and their ability to really thrive in an environment that's not transactional, it's not highly repetitive, but it's nuanced, and it requires them to, really deliver the skill set that we're probably hiring them for in the first place, and really being that expert for us on the front line. So Sean, I really appreciate you taking some time to have this conversation with me today. I found it incredibly valuable. I hope everybody listening has found it incredibly valuable. And I think at this time, with the 10 minutes that we have remaining, Erica, I'd love to turn things back over to you and let Ross and Sean, answer any questions that might have come in from our audience today.
Absolutely. So thank you, Justin and Sean, for that insightful and interactive discussion. And thank you also, Ross, for setting this up quite well by sharing the research that you and your team have found. So as promised, we have saved some time here to take your audience questions, and we've seen some great ones coming in, so thank you for that. Feel free to keep them coming, because as I mentioned earlier, if we're unable to take all of these questions live, we will absolutely be sure to follow up and answer any questions left in the queue offline. So with that, I'll go ahead and dive right in. We had a great question come in from Janet, and she says, for agent efficiency, such as working on internal process improvements, for example, we often find solutions through automation, but how do you prevent becoming too automated? So do you guys have any best practices to share in terms of balancing being too automated and not automated enough? Ross, I'll start with you.
Sure. So one of the pieces of advice we give customers is if you can, instead of entirely removing the agent from the equation, remove 75% of the work that they have to do, and have them concentrate on what human beings are good at, which is being human beings. So a good example of this is, let's say you've got a very good, robust canned messaging library that answers 90% of the questions that consumers have. It's really easy for agents, especially say chat agents or other text-based agents, to begin to rely really, really heavily on those canned messages and overuse them, basically. So instead, what we tell people is, hey, train your agents to use the canned message as a base, but then, so they don't have to type the whole thing, but then have them edit it to add a more human aspect to it. Maybe this person that you're engaged with chat and has used emoticons with you before, and then, okay, return the favor, so forth and so on. Maybe they have indicated to you a particular type of product preference. Make reference to that in the response. So just instead of having them construct the entire response, simply edit it. So that saves a lot of time. The agent is still more efficient, yet it's a better balance between something that can be too robotic.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. Sean, anything you want to add to that one?
Yeah, I would agree with what was said. You don't want to become so automated that you look robotic. You're not authentic. And I would say where a human touch, a human voice, or a human thought is needed, don't automate it. There are certain features of their work that you certainly can automate so that it's efficient, so that it's a better experience for the customer. But I would say, really understand the journey of your customer. How do you know if you're too automated or not? Put yourself in the shoes of your customer. What's the journey like? I recall previously at a previous employer that we were so automated, we were sending emails and different communications that we were pirating from one another. And so that was so automated that it turned off the customer. We hadn't done a customer journey, so we didn't understand what the customers were experiencing, what they were going through. And so I would just say where you can utilize your human skills, where there's people skills that are necessary, where there's empathy and sympathy to be utilized, that's where you use your agents. You don't want to automate those types of interactions and processes.
Absolutely. Great advice. So thank you both for that. I just got a question in from Travis, which is a really good one, and it's something that we hear a lot. This one's specific to the insurance industry, but I've heard it in other industries too. He says, how can I best advise my old school insurance agent clients to digitize their existing processes, open the door to technology, and make automation possible? Ross, do you have any advice for Travis?
Yeah, I think it's about future-proofing your business. So it may be that you can't succeed in, quote-unquote, teaching old dogs new tricks, but if your business is to serve the new dogs, then digital is just the way that it's going. And so most growth across verticals is happening by signing up just a new breed of consumer who has literally, they've grown up in an environment where you're always connected, you've got multiple devices, and that is just the consumer of our future. And that is who will be buying insurance, and that is who will be buying cars. Maybe they'll drive them themselves and maybe not. So I think that it has to do with whether or not you want to be in business in a decade. That's, I think, the way to position it.
Absolutely. So I think we have time to squeeze in one more question, so I'll go ahead and move to that. I think it's a good one to end on for today. Would love opinions from both of you. Who do you think benefits most from automation or self-service? Is it customers or agents, or both?
This is Ross. I'll take a crack at it. I believe that both. I think it increases satisfaction on both sides of the equation, and here's why I think that. I think that automation can do a really good job in certain scenarios, and if it's implemented correctly, and we can essentially answer questions that don't require a human-to-human interaction in an automated fashion, then I think everyone wins. So consumers get their questions answered faster, more efficiently. They don't wait in line. They don't wait in queues, and so that's good because we know they hate that. And it's good for the agents because what that does, I don't believe it replaces them. I think that is an unwarranted fear, because I think there will always be the need for one-on-one interaction, but those interactions are just going to become more robust, more complicated. What it means is that the problems that we need the humans to solve are going to be way cooler problems to be working on. Nobody wants to help a customer reset a password. That's boring, and that can totally be automated. But what that means is that we'll need more skilled agents. They'll need to use more advanced technologies in order to help customers. And I think, based on the agents that I've spoken with, that is actually exciting for them to learn about and to get engaged with those types of things. So if automation can do the easy stuff and leave the hard, interesting problem solving to the human beings, I think that's good for everyone.
Completely agree. Sean, do you have any final thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think automation is going to drive the contact center to develop new skill sets for their staff, and that's a wonderful thing. The technology that's being adopted and implemented and created, it's going to allow us to have super smart, super intelligent frontline staff with skills that no one would have thought of, 10, 15 years ago. And so I think what's happening is that we're giving our customers these amazing choices and amazing options to get resolution where they want, how they want, when they want. And at the same time, technology at one point was being forced on the contact center. Now we have so much data. We're looking at what our customers are telling us. Now we're utilizing technology to our advantage. And by doing so, we're educating our contact center staff, and we're becoming a huge, valuable component of the organization. We're no longer cost centers. I say it all the time, we are the hub of the organization, and I think automation is allowing us to really do some amazing things, and I'm excited to see what the future holds.
Love it. Well, I think that's a perfect note to end on for today. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, but I do want to thank you, Sean, Ross, and Justin, again, for your time and your valuable insight today. I know I enjoyed this discussion, and I hope that everyone who's tuned in today has as well. So before we go, just a couple quick housekeeping reminders. First of all, as I mentioned earlier, we have recorded today's presentation. That recording will be made available in the next 24 hours, and you can actually access it by using the same link that you've used today for our live event. Again, I think we had a couple questions left in the queue that we didn't get a chance to get to. We'll be sure to follow up with you offline and make sure that your questions are answered. And then final reminder, we have included a link down below your console for a really brief post-webinar survey, so we would greatly appreciate your insight and time completing that. But unfortunately, that is all the time that we have for today, so I do need to mention that this presentation is copyright 2017 ICMI. ICMI is responsible for its content and opinions, and our sponsor, Bold Chat by LogMeIn, is responsible for theirs. So once again, on behalf of ICMI and our sponsor, Bold Chat, we do thank you for attending today and hope you have a great afternoon.